Welcome, everybody. I welcome you all with love, and I'm very happy to be here. So I'm going to open with a prayer, which I think is key to understanding about vegetarianism, is that we really are the way it's starting to connect heavens and the earth. We're not so completely earthbound, because truly vegetarianism is, as I'm going to talk about, a very holistic way of thinking and being, connecting from the earth to the spirit. So I'm opening up with this prayer, and feel yourself as connecting the heavens and the earth, the tree of life. Hashem Yikud, Kudushabrihu, Ushihinte, Bi'ilu Imu Laihed, Shem Yuke B'Lavke. B'Yudah Shalom B'Shem, Gabriel Kol Olam. Amen. Take a moment and feel your wholeness. You are the tree of life. Feet in the earth, branches reaching to the heavens. Okay, good. So I would like to kind of introduce myself for a moment, as I've been working and been a vegan actually since the late 1970s, and a pretty much 100% vegan live fooder since 1983. So I have a way of talking about it from more direct experience. I run the Tree of Life Foundation in Patagonia, Arizona, where we have a vegan spiritual retreat, and you're all invited. You come as short as long as you want, as well as we do a variety of workshops. You probably know me most because of the movie on diabetes. And although we're not talking about diabetes so much this evening, in my new book, the last 120 people, which obviously is a full vegan approach, we have a 61% healing rate of type 2 non-insulin dependent, 24% healing rate. Healing means no insulin, no medications, and our blood sugar less than 100, okay? And so we have a 24% healing rate. This is in 3 weeks now. We didn't say months, but weeks. 24% off all medication in 3 weeks. And then for type 1, very unique finding, 21%. That's totally impossible. So I haven't figured out, well, I actually have figured out why, I'm just joking. 21% of type 1 diabetics are healing in 3 weeks. And if you know anything about diabetes, that's absolutely impossible from the standard approach. Actually, generally speaking, healing diabetes, type 2 or type 1, is considered very difficult, if not impossible. So that's what we're doing with a vegan diet, and that's how we're really reaching the world. My work is really taking me around the world, and we get a little bit of a sense of the holistic veganism in just a second around the world from a humanitarian point of view. First, I want to just introduce you to our Veganic farm. Has anyone ever been on a Veganic farm? No, not too many people. So you're invited. We actually have a teaching program. We have an apprenticeship in veganic farming, a 1-year program which we hope will become a master's program. You get a university degree, and very soon we may find out. So this is veganic farming. That means farming with no animal products, no manure, no blood meal, no bone meal, all plant source. That's right. So, I don't want to make anybody feel bad, but think about it. If you're eating good organic food, and it's based on animal manure and animal bones and blood, you should think, it may be useful to think about that. I don't want you to feel bad, but we are teaching this veganic farming. We're, I believe, the only one actually with an apprenticeship program And our production is at least 10% better than organic farming. So just think about that for a second. 10% better than you need animals to grow food. Just not true. We're not trying to push the animals out of the way. We're giving them a break. We're freeing them from their slavery. Okay? So you're there. You're welcome to come see it. And that's one of the messages, one of the things we have in our community is that all our food is 100% organic, veganic, and live. So that's kind of exciting just to think that way. You're not eating of the labor of some animal here. Okay, this is a little bit what we're doing. And next up, that's a gateway to a special cleansing pool. Keep going. That's that pool. We've created a little Garden of Eden in there. Keep going, and we have a variety of cross-cultural events, including Native American. Interesting conversion story. I'm also a Native American sun dancer, and initially, they kept offering this buffalo stew, right, all the time. I didn't want to hear about buffalo stew, but they were having their fun. I was the only one in 4 years to go. The tradition is four days without food and water. So out of all the dancers, I was the only one to do that. Each year they kept adding more vegan food in the before and after. So that's how it works. Like, there's something to say for this. Okay? So this is the kind of thing that happens. Next slide. Keep going. This is a medicine wheel. Now this is one of our demonstrations. This is a solar greenhouse. It will grow up to 25 degrees below zero, feed a family of 4, totally off the grid. So this is something that, again, we show and demo and teach people about when they come and visit. Okay, this is inside the solar greenhouse. Keep going. A little faster. This is, again, our all organic farming, and we're just going to skip. So I'm just kind of emphasizing, you talk holistic veganism, I want the whole world to go this way. And we can. We don't need to depend on animals. So one of the things we're doing is this is in Ethiopia. This person here, go back one, Michael, if you could. No, one, go forward one. I don't know what's happening, but in any case, we have, in Ethiopia, we have a veganic center there, and a school, and growing different, all veganic crops. The person there, Bati, here I'm speaking to, is from right outside the Addis Ababa, and it's all vegan. And our goal is really working at the governmental level. I was going to speak to the Prime Minister, but he died. I was going to speak to the President, but he died. They got lots of diseases, but nevertheless, the Prime Minister's brother is coming to treat his diabetes. So what's my point? Africa is interested, and we have next to just go on. This is Nigeria. This is the same model. We set up a healing center. They have a veganic farm and greenhouse, sprout house, and they're pretty much all veganic. And that's what we're trying to do all over. This isn't Biafra. So we're feeding the, quote, starving kids of Biafra. Keep going. Look at that. So the consciousness is there. We're working at at the kingship level. The local regional king is behind this kind of work. Next slide. This is myself. That's the king from Nigeria and the king from Ghana. Next slide, please. This is where we give a diabetes talk to 900 people in a city called Ho, and in Ghana. And again, the same thing. People are open to returning to their natural ways, which is quite much more vegan than we would expect. Next slide. Okay, that's us giving the diabetes talk. Next slide. This is in Ghana, where we're, again, teaching the kids and seniors moving towards the veganic way of life. And again, same model. farming, education. If here we're just starting a place where people can come and teach. We have a housing setup and teaching all the local schools and regional schools about vegan. And I'm going to say I have to qualify low glycemic way of life because we're creating a diabetes prevention program. So it isn't just vegan, it's low glycemic vegan because that is what is going to reverse veganism around. It's going to spread veganism around the world, but also reverse diabetes. So the countries are really interested in how to prevent these things happening. Next slide. This is us in Mexico. That's my wonderful wife right there. But we're in Mexico doing the same thing. And unfortunately, the president, they have a new president. It's not too interested. But before that, President Fox, his wife was very interested in the veganism, and people want to change. And so we're out there really doing that. We have an orphanage, and we work with migrant farm workers. We're teaching the same thing. It's the exact same thing. Go back to the natural ways, go back to the vegan ways, and people get it. It's not that strange to them, okay? And here's me talking, and this is all the kids at the orphanage. These kids understand, in a very short time, to bring the vegan way back into their lives. So it's really exciting. So that's an aspect of what I call holistic veganism, spreading it around the world in a very real-based way. Okay? So I consider it the evolutionary diet of the future. Now I'm going to give you some different angles than what you've been hearing. So one way it's evolutionary is it protects the germ cell. How many people know what the germ cell is? It's not about germs, okay? It's about the egg and the sperm. And the future of society, future of the species, is about preservation of the egg and the sperm so we can reproduce. Right now, we have tremendous radiation in the world, which you all well know. Well, it's about 30 times higher in a cow than it is in your vegetables, okay? And pesticides, herbicides, about 30 times higher, which means that people who are eating higher on the food chain are damaging their germ cell. And truly, there are many, the rate of infertility is significantly increased, double, tripled, and so forth. So I don't know if that's true among vegans. And the reason is that we have more viable germ cells because we're lower on the food chain. The average child in the United States is born with 200 toxins in the blood. 180 of them are carcinogens, and 217 of them are neurotoxins. So when I say survival of the fittest, I'm actually meaning that. And those who eat lower on the food chain, called plant source only, are going to be more able to survive because we're going to be more able to create viable germ cell so that we can actually reproduce. So it's a different angle, but when you see it called survival of the species, you begin to understand how important what we're doing in the vegan world. Okay, next slide. These are some of my books that include the veganism and the live food. Next slide, please. So the history of veganism is actually not a new idea. Didn't start with Donald Watson in 1944. How about 6,000 years ago? And you had the Anunnaki, and you have the Genesis diet, the Garden of Eden diet, and the conditions were very, very good on the planet. And pretty much everybody was a vegan live fooder. That was really the way of life. And then about 1,500 years ago, after that, the planet began to change its climate. Then you had the flood. But I want to point out that you had the Pelagasians. Anyone ever hear of the Pelagasians? Okay, this is important because people kind of think that veganism is a new idea, right? How many people have been approached that way. It's like, well, what proof do you have that anyone's ever done that? Raise your hand if you've had people say that kind of thing. Okay, so I thought, well, we better get a history here. Pelagasians lived 3,000 years BC. They were 100% live food. Their average age was 200. 200. That's documented. Herodotus, the father of history, that's how I found out about it. Documented that. Okay, it's like, wow, isn't that interesting? So that's just an example. Where were they? Well, I traced them. I actually went to Greece. They're in southern Greece. Clear history. It's a historical reality. So people say, oh, well, there's no basis for this. That's just not true. And then go one slide forward, please. Who's that? Egyptian. Akhenaten and Nefertiti, 1300 BC. They were vegan live fooders. And they taught that for the whole country, okay? It wasn't just the priest class. The whole country at that time, 13 BC, were, moved into that mode of being vegan live fooders. And here you have what? We have the sun, we have all the vegetables. Isn't it interesting? It's like, this is not a new idea, okay? This is some very advanced spiritual people who truly were saying, this is the best diet for your total health and spiritual advancement. So again, not new. Then after that, go back when we had the Essenes, who were what we feel were primarily vegan, vegetarian, and the inner circle live food. And that in my book Conscious Eating, I documented that all the disciples were vegetarian, and James, Jesus, the inner circle were much closer to live food. It's hard to prove. The farthest that we can really go is really vegan. James, brother of Jesus, was known to only eat vegetables, bread, and water. Okay, so get where these people were at. They knew what the best diet was, and they lived that way, and they caused minimal harm. That was one of the issues that was going on. So after that, we have Pythagoras, who studied with the Essenes on Mount Carmel, and he really, before the word vegan came, if you were really doing plant source only, you were called a Pythagorean. Okay, so again, here's a profound spiritual teacher, and this is the way of life that best enhances it. And that's about 500, roughly 500 to 450 BC, where we have these teachings. So that's 2,500 years, roughly speaking, that the whole idea of plant source only has been very public and very much around. And then from there was like the Dark Ages, okay? But then we move into Dr. Bertrand Brenner in the 1890s, again, veganic live food. And then after that, we have the Max Gerson and the Gerson healing work that went on. In 1920, he healed Dr. Albert Schweitzer of diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Healed 450 cases of TB, all using the vegan live food. So again, this is not a new thing. Dr. Seike, who was mentioned earlier, worked from 1940 to 1970, healing a great many people, about 123,000 people over a period of time. So we have that kind of history. And then after that, we have Ann Wigmore, and then this is more live food, but Victor Cousens, myself, and Brian Clements are all people kind of with healing centers in different ways. So next slide, go forward one. So this is the key thing, is that this is by Dr. Abraham Hoffer. Recently, what he's saying is intergenerational studies show that when there's a uniformly poor diet, there's a continual degeneration in each generation. That's what I'm talking about. That's the germ cell. And being vegan creates the opportunity to minimize that, because we're eating high quality food versus junk food, low radiation, relatively speaking, low pesticide food. So these are really important things that go on. Next slide. And I want to talk about the Price Pottinger. I'm sure many of you are tired of hearing about that. But I want to say that that Price Pottinger people have actually misquoted the book. I've read the book 3 times trying to figure out where they got what they said. He never talked about meat, okay? He talked about people going on to white flour and white sugar and junk food. He said that was what broke down the system. So I want to clarify that, and so anybody brings up about meat, that wasn't what he ever said. It is definitely not in that book. Misquote. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So I just want to say, you know, I just said, that's not what I remember reading. So, next slide. And we go on. And I want to just say that it's important not to think about it being righteous. It's just being aware of the implications of our actions. And when you eat a vegan way, you create a much healthier world and a much healthier you. Next slide, please. So I mentioned preserving the germ cell. Obviously, we know about health, vitality. These are basics. I won't go through all that in this half-hour presentation. Feeds the hungry. If everybody went vegan, there'd be enough food to feed the world 7 times over. There's just no problem with it at all. This whole food shortages is really not what's going on in any kind of serious way. Okay? Obviously protects against animal cruelty, preserves the ecology, and again, we're looking at a variety of reasons. Most of you know, but I'm going to give you a reason that you don't know. Probably you don't know. Okay? And that is veganic farming, or organic farming, will take 3,700 pounds of carbon dioxide out of the air per year per acre. What's the meaning of that? Well, see, besides the global warming, yes or no, doesn't matter. What really is building up, which is indisputable, is that we have an excess of carbon dioxide. It used to be 280, and now at 282, now it's 380. And so the more carbon dioxide you have in there, the less oxygen you have for your brain. Okay, we used to be at 38%, we were at 19%, now we're in some places 12%. 12% oxygen means you're going to stimulate the production of cancer. That's what that means. So the idea of organic farming pulling carbon dioxide out of the air, and tree planting pulling carbon dioxide out of the air into the soil, refertilizes the soil, brings the carbon you need to keep the whole cycle going. So this is a kind of a unique thing about organic farming. It doesn't happen with commercial farming, and so it's just a little point to see. Now, maintains and protects the biocomputer mind. Part of the reason, well, I like to think that vegans being a little smarter, okay, is that we're eating lower in the food chain. So we have less radiation, pesticides, herbicides, which affect our nervous system, which affect our brain. There's just no question about it. Okay? So by eating lower, we're actually protecting our brain tissue. I'm giving a very medical point of view, but it's like, oh, well, that's pretty important, isn't it? If you have a properly functioning brain, you start to make decisions that protect your own individual sovereignty. Like, I got to protect my health. I got to do this. I have to do. You're able to function. If you're dumbed down, okay, then it's hard to make the decisions that are best for you. You lose your sovereignty over yourself, your sovereignty as a mother for your kids. People get where I'm going with that. Because really, the ability to think is extremely important. And the less toxins you have in your brain, the better you're going to think. And of course, I think that the vegan diet will stimulate more brain power anyway. Okay. So I'm moving through it. And the Yama and Niyamas, the 10 Commandments, are kind of ways of life, and that supports all the ways of life, not just the idea of nonviolence, which of course is pretty important, and it also clears the subtle channels for meditation for spiritual life, the nadis and the koshas. Those are all long lectures, but that's a key thing. And the vegan diet, generally throughout the world, is the most associated with spiritual development, except for one religious group. Okay, all the other groups in the world pretty much go vegan as the optimal diet for spiritual life. Okay, so next slide, please. So it brings us peace with the body, peace with the mind, peace with the family, peace with the community, peace with all cultures, peace with the ecology, and peace with God. So these are the kinds of, this is where across the board, a vegan way of life brings many levels of peace. And my book, Creating Peace by Being Peace, speaks to all these issues pretty directly. Okay, so peace with the divine, we keep going there. And basically, most people know Genesis 1:29, it says, go vegan. Right? That's easy. Next slide. So I compared these, and so ahimsa means, and you're pretty aware of that, do no harm. And we go to thou shalt not murder. That's doing lots of harm. Okay? So you see the parallel that is right there. And then we have satya, truth, thou shalt not bear false witness. And the idea is that the animal world creates a myth. Well, you know, the cows like giving us their milk. You know, it's like, well, maybe not. The average cow used to do 2,000 gallons and live about 30 years. The cows today live 3 to 5 years and are milked to death at 50,000 gallons a year. Dramatic difference here. So it's kind of creating a myth that somehow they've disconnected the whole thing from the fact that you're killing the animals. So that's kind of a big lie, okay? So then we go to stealing. Asetya, thou shalt not steal. Well, we steal the fur, we steal the skin, we steal the flesh, we steal the soul, we steal the life of the animals. Stealing's going on, and people don't even think about it that way, okay? And then we talk of brahmacharya, which is sexual perversion. So when you look at animal husbandry, you have massive sexual perversion. Well, you're talking about the artificial insemination of the cows and the chickens, so that's the chickens and cows being raped on a regular basis. And how do you think you get the sperm to artificially inseminate? Does it just pop out of there? No, not really. So you have that kind of level too, which is across species sexual perversion. So people don't like to think about it that way. They usually don't think about it that way, but that's going on. Okay? And the final thing is the apigraha, which is jealousy, or here thou shalt not covet. And what you see is people are creating ecological pollution, in a sense, taking other people's land from them, and on our right to clean air, clean water. Okay, so that's coveting, taking your neighbor's resources. So we'll go ahead, keep going, and keep going here, keep going. And so there's LCR cow. She's smiling. Well, that's just like, who are we kidding? See, this is not truth. This is asatya. Next slide. And then all the stealing of the animals' lives. Go ahead. And this is the sexual perversion. I think your father was a turkey baster. It's like, right. And then you see what's going on. That's sexual perversion. We don't think about it because we're not sensitized to it. It's like, oh yeah, that's what you do. We call that animal husbandry. It's like, what? Next slide, please. And then the pollution, it goes on. Next slide. And we're looking, of course, the water. You know, there are many estimates, 5 to 10, but probably animal agriculture around the world is taking 50 to 70% of the water. Okay, so that's kind of what we're doing. But we are having desertification. That's real. 20 million acres a year go to desert. 70 million acres a year are trees that are cut down. This is not good for the skin of the living earth. Keep going. Go ahead. So then, of course, you have the grain and petroleum. So why is that a significant thing? Well, when you realize that there's, according to the UN, 40,000 kids a day die of starvation, that grain is going to feed cows, not the kids. There's a direct correlation. It's like, oh, wow, when I get that, it's like, what are the choices being made in the world where literally kids are starving to death to feed people's food habits, their meat-eating habits? These are very, moral decisions, ethical decisions that are being made, from my point of view, and I think most people here, from the wrong point of view. Okay? Okay, the acres, so we're saying, destroying the soil. Keep going, keep going. This is the carbon dioxide. I'm kind of getting around the CO2 global warming. It's the CO2 shortage is the problem. Okay, out of order, that's what happens. Keep going. And keep going here. Yoga Chirti Virti Nirodha, which means yoga is stilling the activities of the mind. So we're going very holistic because that's what the talk's about, right? So when you eat a animal that's been killed, you're taking in its pain, its misery, its suffering, its fear, and that goes into your mind and agitates your mind. That's the principle that I want to share. The second thing is it clogs the subtle channels. What are these subtle channels? I'm talking about the subtle energetic channels, which we call in yoga the nadis, and the koshas, which are layers of the mind. We're taking the energy of death and misery deep into ourselves. Worse, if you do yoga asana, it actually opens you up to take more of these energies into your system. So, not really so good. Next slide, please. And this is a symbol of the nadis, also the caduceus, and it really clogs and interferes with the whole spiritual mechanism. And that's the key thing I want to say. In terms of a deeper thing, Kundalini is the spiritual energy. Meat, fish, chicken, and beef act as a sludge to the flow. And that's part of the theme of this book that I wrote, yeah. So diet affects us on the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual levels, every level. When you eat meat, it really lowers the vibrations. Next slide. Food's a love note from God. Let's make it nice. And here's the Krishna Society note. It doesn't say dairy here. He said the best diet, if you can do it, is just fruits and vegetables. Take note of that, because people use that as a reason to have dairy. But he's saying, not really. Okay? This is my own, one of my spiritual teachers, and his teaching very simply was, when you kill an animal, you create pain, misery, fear, and cruelty. And when we eat that animal, we're taking that all into us, and that comes out in us as disease and misery and lowers our frequency. Next slide. So this is Neil Barnard and I have both done this work, and in terms of diabetes, on his program, the vegan program, he had a 46% reduction in medication. And our program, adding a few tweaks in, let's say, a vegan program, but live food, we really actually have a 97% reduction in anyone taking any medication. And we have a tremendous amount of healing, as I mentioned, 61%, 4%, and 21% completely healed. And with type 2 insulin dependent, 86 are completely off medication. So we take it a little step further, which is live, organic, and low glycemic. Big point there, low glycemic. And we get dramatically increased healing rates. I was on the vegan cruise, and Neil and I had a chance to talk, Dr. Bernard and I had a chance, and we pretty much are at the same place about the fat, which I'll be talking about tomorrow, and I'm going to maybe not shock you, but give you some real scientific information on the whole cholesterol stuff. But basically, the bottom line is, what I feel and what he feels is no animal, no fat from any animal in any direction in any way. Okay, so it's all, if you're going to have fat, it should be only plant source, only. Okay, and next slide. So human breast milk is 54% saturated fat, and we do need much more fat than you think for our health and well-being. Not 54%, but we need up there. So what's the optimal diet? So we're going to look at that as we're getting ready to conclude this kind of introductory talk, is that the optimum diet is plant source only, it's organic, okay? It's well hydrated. It is low glycemic. This is the optimal diet to minimize aging, okay? And diabetes is accelerated aging, and the research does talk about low glycemic as being key. Next slide, please, Miguel. And high mineral as well. Next slide. And that's a minimum of, basically, it's what people are now calling high vegan. That's a new term, but basically it's all vegan, and close to 80% live is like an optimum diet for that. And then most important here is individualized to your constitution. I will talk about that tomorrow. I will be talking about how, in my experience, I get 100% success rate for anybody who wants to be vegan. Okay, that's a claim I am making. And I've been seeing clients for over 40 years with this. It's like 100% success rate, but you got to know what you're doing. Because as you know, there are many people who try and don't succeed. So tomorrow I'm going to reveal some of the secrets of how to be 100% successful. That's probably worth knowing. We got that. And don't eat too much, and the food should be made with love. Okay, next slide. Wait, we're almost done. The consciousness of holistic vegan is the really key thing. We're next slide, please. And keep going and go through that. So here we are. Is that in each generation, we're given the medicine for that generation. In our generation, it is veganism that's the medicine to heal ourselves and the world. So I see that holistic veganism, or veganism in the sense, is really the medicine of the present and of the future. And thank you all for being here and being vegan. Okay. So I hope to see you tomorrow at 3:30, and we'll go over really how to be successful vegan in an hour. So that's a short time, but we'll do it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, and thank you all for being here, and I hope to see some of you tomorrow. So, because we're going to have another big day. So we're now going to be cleaning up, and if anyone wants to help us, we would appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.